Did a little different than Sunday night, but same people coming at you. Jeff Erickson, Scott Jenstad, all talking baseball on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast starting next. Happy Monday morning, everybody. A little bit different than normal, but welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I'm Scott Jenstad, joined as always on this version of the podcast by Jeff Erickson. Jeff, it's been a couple of weeks since I spoke to you virtually, but we did have dinner this weekend, which was really fun. But how are you?
Doing well. Yeah, it was fun doing the steak dinner on Friday. It was good doing that. Chris Liss was in usual form. We had a couple of drafts, a football draft and a baseball draft, so that was good at the dinner. So that was fun. I'm excited. Our Reds have called up Christian Encarnacion Strand.
Yep,
they had a really tough weekend against the Brewers. I gotta say, I'm not surprised. The same thing kind of happened 2 years ago, where they had a wraparound home and away series with the Brewers surrounding the All-Star break, and it went similarly badly. So I like that they're trying to do something about it, though. Add some offense. We'll see how it gets it all to fit into the lineup, though.
Yeah, baseball's such a long season. You're going to have some downs for sure, but that was a tough time to lay down. Just the team right behind you too. So yeah, the Reds are have slipped into second place, but still in a good spot as we enter the second half of the season here. Corbin Burns was nasty against them. I wonder if he looked the most back he's been all year. That was about the best he's looked, but. Speaking of standings, the AL East is wild right now, Jeff. The Jays, the Orioles, and the Red Sox have all won 8 of 10, moving the Yankees, who still are somehow like 5 or 6 games over, but into last place, tied with the Red Sox. The Rays, who had that unbelievable start, now have a 1-game lead in the East. This is an unbelievable division of baseball.
It's stacked, and we knew it all along. I mean, we said it all along, but the Red Sox really kind of stepped it up too, because they were at one point like a game over 500. We were talking about maybe, them being sellers at the deadline. And I think the opposite is now more likely. Now there's still 9 games out in the division, but I mean, it's just loaded. You look at this here, the Orioles and the Jays are already in as wild card teams right now, but they can't rest. Orioles, I mean, the Orioles are looking pretty good. They're 6 games over the pack, but, yeah, really impressive. And the fact is, you got the Astros still hanging in the wild card race. They're the 3rd wild card too. I mean, This is I'd say the American League is ridiculous right now.
Well, the American League West and East, the Central is still muddling along there. But yeah, Boston and New York are only 2 games out of the playoffs right now. It's wild that we're July 17th and all 5 of the East teams are within 2 games of the playoffs. It's definitely crazy. We're gonna have all the playoff teams from the East and the West. You mentioned the Astros; they're 3 games back of the Rangers. Rangers still hanging in there really well. I want to ask you, we're 2 weeks away from the trade deadline. As we look at kind of fantasy leagues, did you find yourself kind of thinking about adding people who might get impacted by the deadline? Did you hold on to someone who you think might slide into a job? I was back and forth with Giovanni Gallegos this week. I think that the Cardinals, we wouldn't have guessed they'd be sellers at the start of the year by any means, especially in the NL Central. But they're 11.5 out. They're 13 games under 500. They got a lot of teams in their way too. It's not like just 1 or 2 teams there. They're in last place. I held on to Gallegos because I think they may trade their closer, and when that happens, maybe Gallegos, maybe they trade Gallegos too. I don't know, but it probably would have been a drop for me. But I think I'm going to wait a couple weeks and see how that situation kind of clears itself out.
So I on a similar sort of mindset, I declined to trade for Jordan Hicks because first of all, we don't know how much job security really has. The way Ollie Marmol has used that bullpen the last year and a half, hard to really say that he's a capital C closer,
right?
And he's probably going to get dealt.
That's the thing. I mean, they've kind of used him as the capital C closer. Helsley's been out. We don't know what happens when he comes back. But you're right. I think that. I mean, who else? We're looking at the Mets and the Cardinals are the 2 surprising ones. Do you think they're both sellers at the deadline?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be one team that surprises us as a seller and one team that surprises us as a buyer. Like one of the Angels, Cardinals, Padres, and Mets will be a buyer, I predict.
That's a good group right there because they're all teams that expected to be contenders and are not there at the moment. I mean, the Angels are 2 games under, but they're 6 games out of the wild card with both Boston and New York in their way. That's a good stretch. I mean, obviously the Ohtani trade, whether that happens or not, will be the biggest news of the deadline. I don't think they'll do it. I would probably argue that maybe they should, but I don't think they will. But you're right. That's a good group of 4 teams that are supposed to be good and aren't right now, and maybe won't fully give up by this point.
Yeah, tough loss for the Angels last night.
That series was crazy,
insane.
Yeah,
Saturday night was just stupid. Yeah. I mean, in a good way, in a funny way.
Yeah.
But yeah, that game, like, okay, we can build off this. Yes, we got some momentum going. We're gonna do this, and then next night, they've lost 2 out of 10. 2 of their last 10. They've won 2 out of their last 10. They're 2-8 out of 10. Spit it out, Jeff. Come on.
Yeah, it's the time of year where if you're on the kind of the edge of that contender, you can't have a 2-8 stretch because suddenly you move from buyer to seller pretty darn quick. What are the percent chances you think they trade Ohtani in 2 weeks?
50-50.
Oh, I think it's way lower than that. That's interesting. I think I'd probably would have gone like 15-85.
Yeah, and I would have 2 weeks ago. But I mean, the Trout injury, the way they've played lately. I mean, they got another big series. I think they face the Yankees next. I mean, this is another direct competitor. They need to make up some ground. They can't just winning. They're getting to the point where they're going to have to get some sweeps in here soon.
They need a good stretch pretty quick. You're right. They play New York, but then they play Pittsburgh and then Detroit. And they're going to need to have a good stretch there. And then they're at Toronto, so they bookend some tough series with a couple of potentially easy ones. But yeah, these next 2 weeks are fascinating for the Angels as a franchise. The Major League Baseball as a whole. If Ohtani moves somewhere else, I'm curious obviously he's the best player in the league right now. I don't think we can argue that, but you wonder for a 2-month rental what that price tag looks like.
It's still got to be pretty huge.
It has to be. I mean, 2 months of him is massive, and you talk about looking for someone to put you over the top. I mean, he's the absolute, obviously the elite guy.
I would say though, I think there's a little bit of an incentive for acquiring teams to go out and try to trade for him now if you're going to be in on the signing to begin with.
Hope he has a really good time, enjoys your city, enjoys 2 months of competitive baseball, and signs right.
Dodgers.
Signs, yeah.
I mean, I did Dodger Heads. It's a podcast on the Blue Wire Network. I did some live things with them in Vegas. They have Blue Wire has a studio at the Wynn, and it's really sweet, cool. Actually.
Nice.
But we were talking about it's like get them introduced. The Dodger culture is supposed to be a pretty big deal, right? Yep. If you're going to be making a big selling point, why? And he wants to win. He wants to be on a team that's charging for it here. Well, the Dodgers are perfect for that. I mean, they have prospects to deal. The Rays have prospects to deal. The Reds have prospects to deal. The Orioles have prospects to deal. These are all teams that should be making a push. Now, I don't know about the Orioles in terms of or the Reds in terms of a free agent destination, but
I was going to say, you're a Reds fan. You've been a Reds fan for a long time. Would you want the Reds to do it?
Oh, of course, yes.
Okay. Even if it means giving up some blue chip guys and going for it. Okay.
Right. I mean, short of Ellie, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And realistically, he's not signing there. I wouldn't expect he's signing somewhere
right.
I think he's going to sign a coastal big market team.
I agree.
You never know. I mean, maybe he and Ellie become best friends, but yeah, I don't think he's signing there. I don't think they can afford to sign him anyway. I don't think they probably can't afford to sign him. I don't think they will afford to
afford ain't got nothing to do with it. To use a phrase, to misuse a phrase where it wasn't afford, but deserve ain't got nothing to do with it. But
yeah, I don't think they're going 700 million for anybody though.
Right. Padres are an interesting team here. On Saturday, they had just beaten the Phillies on Friday. They had gotten to 3 games under 500. And playing pretty good ball. I talked a little bit about them at the break, talked a little bit about them on VSiN about their chances of making the playoffs. I still thought they had a reasonable chance. The Diamondbacks are faltering. Yep. Who knows about the Dodgers and Giants? They're playing better, but they have flaws. And they had a 3-0 lead. Blake Snell was dealing. They blow that. The bullpen blows that lead against the Phillies. They lose that game. They get swept in the doubleheader, lose again in extra innings last night. I mean, they went from okay, good vibes all around. We're going to make a run. We've seen them go for it before they're on sell watch right now.
Yeah. They come out of the break and get swept. That's it's just exactly the opposite.
3 out of 4. Yeah. They won the first.
Oh, that's right. They had the doubleheader. That's right. I forgot they were the one team that had a 4-game series. But yeah, right. Just get to lose the doubleheader and then lose on Sunday. That's oof. Right. It's rough. They're right on the edge. Speaking of the NL West,
hold on. One more thing on the Padres. Sorry.
Go.
Soto isn't signed long term. He's got another year left, but sign Ohtani, trade Soto. Could happen. Just saying.
Interesting. I had in my head that he was signed. That's really interesting. I guess because he got traded, I just kind of assumed he signed, but he really hasn't. Huh?
He got traded with 2.5 years left. Remember?
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, I mean, it's Soto's not really to blame for their shortcomings, although he could have been better earlier when they didn't have Tatis.
Right.
But I mean, Machado's finally waking up, but he's having a way down season, and it's just they just don't have that sum. Like,
yeah,
it's just missing. So that's a very interesting team for me coming up on the deadline. What do they do?
Yeah, it really is. I'm looking at Soto. You're right. He's arbitration eligible next year, then an unrestricted free agent going to 2025. For some reason, I had in my head that he had signed when he got there. But you're right. That's an interesting one. You're right. The Padres and Angels are probably the two most interesting at the deadline.
Yeah.
Before we jump into previewing Week 17, the NL West is you mentioned the Diamondbacks faltering. They have lost 8 of their last 10. They are finally out of first place. Not only out of first place, down to third place. The Giants passed them too. Giants have won 5 in a row. Do you consider the Giants a real team here? How do you feel about the Giants who have definitely overplayed expectations this year?
They could be a real boy. I wasn't sure. I mean, I still am not sure, to be honest. But, I mean, they've been playing as good a ball as anybody for the last 2.5 months. And I got to say, I keep doubting them. Now, they did sweep the Pirates, who are the Pirates.
Yeah.
So you kind of want to take that with the appropriate grain of salt. But this is a team that can't get anybody to take their money. They're weird. Any of the big name guys.
They've tried.
They can afford Ohtani. They absolutely can. Now, do they have the prospects? I think so. I mean, Matos would have to be involved. Others, and the thing is, most rentals, you're like, the prospect price isn't going to be worth it. It's like it's just a rental. When it's Ohtani, I think it's different. And when you got a chance now, and especially today's environment, you get into the tournament. We saw last year with the Phillies and Padres. Just get there, make some hay, and they can still win the division.
Yeah, I mean they're right there. They're game and a half behind. It's gonna be fun. Who knows how these things ever work out? But you're right. They do have the prospects. They have Kyle Harrison in AAA who walks a lot of guys but strikes out a ton of guys. A super interesting prospect. And you mentioned Matos. They have Marco Luciano at AA too. They've got a pretty good group of kind of blue chip guys that if they wanted to give up one or two of those, they do have the pieces in play.
I agree.
Yeah. So let's jump into the fantasy world here. We got week 17 coming up. We got a full week. We come off this, the All-Star break. It's kind of a quiet week fantasy wise. The week before in FAAB, you're like, there's only 3 games. This week, we're not really dealing with a lot of games to look at. But this week coming up is big. There's 11 teams with 7 games. In the National League, we have the Giants, Cardinals, Reds, Cubs. The American League, we have the A's, Mariners, Orioles, Rays, Twins, Tigers, and Royals. We do have a 5-game week with the Rockies this week. Never fun there. They do have a couple games at home, but a tough week if you own any Rockies hitters. But who do you like for offense this week? You're looking FAAB this week. I thought there were a lot of teams that had really good schedules on offense. So who are you looking to kind of exploit this week on the offensive side for fantasy?
Well, you mentioned the Giants, and I think we got to start there. Cincy at Washington. This is a much better road hitting team than home hitting team. We've always said, Giants and Padres, you tend to think, okay, let's get their hitters when we're on the road. And that's definitely the case, especially Washington too. I mean, sneaky good team to always get your bats going against.
Yeah. No, that's Cincy, Washington. We love our Reds, but their pitching staff obviously has not been great. Not a lot of good numbers there. With the Nationals, they get Jake Irvin and Mackenzie Gore and Josiah Gray. Josiah Gray wasn't all-star, but I don't think we fear facing Josiah Gray. I like our Reds a lot this week. 7 home games for the Reds, 4 against the Giants, 3 against Arizona. We mentioned Arizona faltering a little bit. They missed Zack Gallen, which is key. Anytime you look at Arizona, you're like, well, as long as I don't face Zack Gallen, you're pretty happy with that. And they do not. On the Giants side, they do get Logan Webb, but they get Desclafani, Ross Stripling, Alex Cobb. Alex Cobb's been good, but you like a couple of those pitchers there. I think the Reds should score a lot of runs this week. Probably see a lot of runs across baseball. It's hot everywhere. A lot of games. I think it's going to be a big offensive week this week.
Agreed. I think on our list, we also talked about the Rays a little bit at Texas and then 4 home against Baltimore. Big week for the Rays. Facing 2 really good teams. They're only one, like you alluded, only 1 game up in the AL East now. And I mean, it really technically 7 games up on the top wild card. I mean, all of a sudden you start to think about that.
Right.
it's taken their toll. I mean, the injuries have taken its toll on the Rays. The starting pitching especially. I mean, they've been able to fake it most of the year, but I'm waiting for them to do something. I really think they need to do something.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. They lost two guys that were two of the buzzier starting pitchers in draft season with Jeffrey Springs and Drew Rasmussen. Lost them for the year, and they've just been gone for months. They did get Glasnow back, but yeah, they're an interesting team because they probably need a starting pitcher or two in order to make a real run in this year. But you're right; they play 3 at Texas, 4 at Baltimore. I mean, they could look a lot different after this week if they go 2-5, 1-6 this week. Suddenly the season looks a lot different. If they go 5-2 this week, suddenly they look great and everybody feels good about that. But that's a good call. That's a really fun week for the Rays. We're going to learn a lot about them this week.
Shane McClanahan today too, by the way, coming off the IL.
Yeah, that's
very big start.
They needed him. They needed him badly back, and you needed him to be healthy. Obviously, that's huge. It's interesting. You mentioned that, but on the flip side, you mentioned they played Baltimore this weekend. Grayson Rodriguez up starting today, facing the Dodgers and at the Rays. Obviously, Grayson was the huge mover in draft season. There was a lot of talk that he was going to make the roster right away. He didn't off the bat, but came up right away. Struggled. Has 2 starts this week. He's owned everywhere, so I didn't put him in our FAAB talk really. I think he's 1% available in the online championship, 100% rostered in the main event. But he was obviously really rough. 7.3 ERA in 45 innings. I assume if you've held him, you're starting him this week. You're just kind of holding your breath in that Dodger start, though.
Yeah, well, and the Rays start for that matter. Because
neither one's easy for sure.
Yeah, he was dealing at AAA, just straight up dealing. So that's something that you have to be encouraged by, at least that he took well to the demotion. In the last 60 days at AAA, 169 ERA, 0.99 WHIP. So basically the full extent of his AAA stint there. But you really look at that and you're like, yeah, okay. And the thing is, we're going to talk about this later in FAAB, our FAAB talk. It's ugly out there, man. It's tough streets. Really tough.
I have one league where I really need a couple pitchers, not just one, not just backup bench guys, like any guys to start. And I was bidding on. I had Jordan Lyles and Luis Medina in my list this week. Like that'll tell you because they had 2 starts
for Luis Medina.
Yep. 2 starts for both of them, and I'm
Funky cold Medina.
Maybe I got that reference. Maybe they get 10 strikeouts combined. It's rough. It's hard to find guys that you don't feel are going to smoke you too. It's not like you're like, this guy will be okay. Like you're just holding your breath. They don't give up 7 runs in 2 1/3 and just kill your ratios. It is almost impossible to find decent starting pitching right now.
I think you can't force it. I think you got to just find your 1-start guys or find your elite relievers, your Yenny or Canoes.
Yeah, and he's been a little bit bumpy lately, but
the next version of that though,
I dropped down to I think I needed 3 guys. I added Joel Payamps in Milwaukee, who's been really good. Devin Williams threw all 3 games this weekend against Cincinnati, so maybe they ease off him to start the week. I think they're off on Monday, but so it doesn't help quite as much. But it's just he's pitching really well too. You're right though, you can't force it. I mean, I needed multiples, so my list was pretty long with some ugly names on it. But it's rough out there.
It's the difference between this year and last year for me. Last year, I had that team where I told you I didn't pick up a starting pitcher for 2 months.
I remember that.
God, that felt so nice.
It's so sweet.
Yeah, you just realize how rare it is. I mean, that we got the pitching right that year, in that league, I should say. But this is going to be a continuing thing, especially the way pitchers are managed.
Yeah, it's you're right with the pitching management. I mean, a lot of these guys, when we talk about some of these names. The problem is you not only pick them up and they can be a disaster blow up, but they might pitch 4 innings and get yanked too. So it's just hard to, you don't get strikeouts, you don't get a chance of the win. Suddenly you take 2 categories off the board and you got guys who are going to kill your ratios. It's hard to find anybody that's you feel decent about just not killing you.
Yeah, exactly.
Also some good schedules before we jump into other stuff. The Cardinals are nice this week. We mentioned them earlier, kind of we're talking about selling and trade deadline, but offensive wise, they're 3 against Miami, 4 against the Cubs. Pretty good situation there. Although they do face Jesus Lardo and Sandy Alcantara this week, so that's a little tough. Although Sandy's been not quite 2022. Sandy, the Cubs have a nice schedule too. You mentioned attacking Washington pitching. They get Washington in the front half of the week. We talked about how the Giants get Washington in the back half of the week, and the Cubs get 4 against St. Louis this weekend. And we've mentioned that St. Louis is bad, so that's a good spot to be too.
Yeah, it is. It is. By the way, the Cubs, still the only NL Central team with a positive run differential. Even though the Brewers have won 4 in a row, they're still -8 on the year. Even though they're 10 games over 500 and the Cubs are 6 under 500. But they've just won some. They've lost all the 1-run games and had some blowout wins, I guess. But no one's talking about. The Cubs are another one of those fulcrum teams. They could sell off too. Marcus Stroman would be a big prize in this market.
Yeah. Joseph Nelson in the chat asked Jeff, are the Dodgers buyers the break? If so, who do you think they go after? I think they definitely are, and I think it'll be a starting pitcher. They've been playing a lot of musical chairs in starting pitching rotation. They've had a lot of injuries. I know that Urias is back. Kershaw should be back maybe at the start of August, although it sounds like he's not going to be as quick as we thought he was when we first went on. But I mean, they're throwing Michael Grove out there. Bobby Miller came out of the game yesterday with some knee soreness. I think they need one more starter. I think they'll go pretty aggressively after one more starter. You think 2
more starters and
they probably need 2. They probably need 2 more. You're probably right.
And a right-handed outfielder. They're using Peralta, Outman, and Hayward on a regular basis in the outfield, and Mookie's in the infield right now.
You're right. All 3 of those guys are lefties.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, obviously JD at utility or at DH helps a little bit there. I use utility, DH helps a little bit there, but you're right. A right-handed outfielder who can play some defense would probably be pretty good.
Preferably center field.
Yeah, so you need somebody to run around out there pretty well.
And I don't think Jake Marisnick is it, but he's there right now.
Is he right-handed? I'm trying to visualize his swing.
I don't try to visualize too long, but yes.
I was gonna say I try. It's weird. I can see his face, but I'm trying to visualize. I'm usually really good at that, but I'm looking. Yeah, Marisnick is right-handed. Okay. Yeah. So you're right. Not the answer. I think that
is an answer, but not the answer.
A kind of an answer. Josh Outman from Redwood City, California, right by my house where I grew up. I did not know he was such a local. That's awesome. Cool. Well, let's jump into FAAB. But first, a note from our partners at AG1. AG1 is the daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. I drink it literally every day. I gave AG1 a try because I wanted better gut health, a boost in energy, immune system support. Also, I hate taking pills, so this is really great for me. And I want a supplement that actually tastes damn good. I drink AG1 in the morning before starting my long days. It makes me feel ready to take on my day. And also like I'm feeling like I'm doing something good for my body. Since I've been drinking AG1, I've noticed an overall feeling of health plus sustained energy, improved digestion, and most importantly, support for mental clarity and focus. Because Jeff, I'm old, so I need that. Covering my nutritional basis for the day literally could be an easier, which is why I trust AG1. I just mix 1 small scoop with water, drink it first thing every morning, and I'm done. It has 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients. I also like it. It costs less than $3 a day. Pretty good if you ask me there. It's a really effective daily habit with high quality sourced ingredients. It's really a win-win. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/roto. That's drinkag1/roto. Check it out.
They sent some their product to me as a sample, and I can attest to the taste.
Nice. I mean, and that matters too. Some of the stuff is pretty gross tasting, even if it works. So it's nice to have something that tastes pretty good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about hitters in FAAB first. I felt like we talked about the pitching streets were pretty tough. I want to talk about hitters first. Let's get 2 out of the way real quick because they were we probably didn't look into them as much as we would have because they were not available in NFBC leagues, but obviously Cleveland's playing a lot of different leagues. You mentioned Christian Encarnacion Strand, also Endy Rodriguez in Pittsburgh. The catcher's getting called up, but Encarnacion Strand, obviously he's the big name. He'll be big in FAAB next weekend, assuming everything goes well this week. He'll be the big name in NFBC leagues next weekend. Jeff, is he going to play every day? Where does he play? How do our Reds work out the situation with CES getting called up?
That is the question, obviously, because he is a first baseman. He did play third base. That's obviously that's all locked up right now. The left side of the infield is, pretty much Ellie.
They're not messing with Matt, right? They're not messing with either of those guys, right?
Yeah. Max sometimes plays second with Ellie or DH when Ellie gets his shortstop reps in. But for the most part, those two are on that side. You got India in there still. So, and when one of those is playing DH or something like that, then Steer is still playing third base. So it's first base, but then you've got Votto. Now, Votto's not going to start against lefties, so that's some of the piece of the puzzle there. They've been playing Stevenson more behind the plate lately, and less DH. That's got to be a pathway there. Steer is playing more outfield right now. I know at one point they were trying Encarnacion Strand in the outfield a little bit. I don't really think that's a good idea, but we'll see what happens there. Point is, they're going to have to do some mixing and matching to make this all work. They're already kind of a deep team. I mean, you look at it, they're like Nick Senzel only starts against lefties. And he rarely gets a start against a right-hander. So now you're adding one more right-handed bat into the mix. It's kind of tricky.
So probably a little bit of Votto, a little bit of Steer, a little bit of Fraley, and maybe, a game here and there for McLean seems like kind of the way it works out. But you're right. These things usually work themselves out. Someone gets hurt, someone slumps. But, there might be a few frustrating days where one of your Reds favorites sits a little more maybe than you want him to.
I think so.
Yeah. How do you feel about Encarnacion just Strand as a prospect here? Are you excited? Do you think he can hit right away? I'm obviously 20 home runs in AAA already this year with 65 runs, 62 RBI. I mean, obviously he's mashing. Doesn't strike out a ton either. A lot of these prospects we see called up, like some of the guys we'll get to later that strike out a lot in the minors. He was 21.8% this year, walk rate over 10%. He's having an awesome year. He's hitting 331 in AAA.
Yeah, just pounding the ball. I mean, you gotta like a lot of things that you see here. And just another power bat. And honestly, the Reds, I know when they had a streak of like a home run every day for like 20 days, but before that, they were actually one of the lower power output teams for the season. They could actually use another power bat, believe it or not. So I'm actually kind of low-key intrigued about that aspect of it there too. I kind of think that he's someone that, I think he's going to be someone that he might struggle with the batting average. I worry a little bit about him like beating up on bad pitching. I think that happened in spring training. I mean, the walk rate really took that leap up this year, and I'm very encouraged by that.
Yeah, I am too. I was actually happy you were on your way to the Hollywood Bowl yesterday when he got called up, so I was able to add him in Yahoo Friends.
I saw that
right away. Yeah,
I saw that.
I was not getting him if you were around the computer. I do understand that, but I was surprised. I think he was actually rostered earlier, and then whoever had him probably just it's a really small bench, so probably couldn't hang on to him. But
right,
I snapped him up. You did that to me and a couple of guys, so I had to get you back once. Andy Rodriguez in Pittsburgh getting the call today. Obviously, we're always looking for any kind of catcher who's not bad. 6 home runs, 4 stolen bases, hitting 270 in AAA so far this year. So not numbers that jump off the page. He was really good in A ball and AA in 21 and 22. Do you think this is an impact must-add catcher too right off the bat? How do you feel about Andy getting called up in Pittsburgh? Obviously, in most NFBC leagues, he'll be popular next week. He was available in a few leagues. He was available in my yogurt league. He got a really big bid. I wasn't even close to getting him. But how do you feel about Rodriguez as kind of an impact guy off the bat as head catcher?
Well, I mean, I like that the Pirates are calling him up. Like you said, he didn't crush it this year, but he crushed it every other level before.
He did.
And it's not like he was striking out a ton or anything like that.
His K to walk is almost even. It's impressive.
Yeah, it is. And it's 15% strikeout rate. So he just wasn't pounding. He wasn't hitting the ball for authority. That is concern. His ISO at AAA was 151. Prospects, you want him well over 200, but he is behind the plate.
31% hard hit in AAA too, which is, I saw that and I'm like, all right, we'll see what happens this week. But I became a little less intrigued fantasy wise, at least off the bat when I saw it, when I looked a little deeper like you did.
Yeah, Austin Hedges is hitting 175 with 1 homer though, so the bar to improvement is pretty low.
I would have lost that, but I would have taken the under. I would have guessed lower than that.
It's, believe it or not, he's on a hot streak.
I was gonna say I thought he was like in the 130s at one point, which is why I said that. But yeah, it's not great. I mean, not someone who should be blocking anybody, that's for sure.
Right, and I know they like what he does defensively and all that, but come on, you're the Pirates. Reality is kind of settling in, and I say that knowing that people could be saying that about my Reds in another week. Our Reds, sorry.
Yeah.
If we get this.
Jeff, I jumped on the bandwagon. Don't kick me off quite yet.
I would never shove you off.
I don't have my Ellie Dela Cruz shirt on right now, but I do have one. So there's that. I'll wear it next week. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. So, but let's speaking of teams and jumping off bandwagons, the A's called up 2 prospects this week. The first week all year where the A's are the most interesting team in FAAB. Zack Gelof and Tyler Soderstrom got called up this week. Gelof is a second baseman, a little bit of pop, a little bit of speed, so nice combo there for fantasy leagues. Soderstrom is the A's top prospect, a ton of power, but also a ton of swing and miss. How did you handle these guys in FAAB this week? Was there one you were more interested in? Was there maybe team dynamic, roster-wise, what you needed? But how do you kind of feel about these guys? It seems like they're going to play every day. The A's have no reason not to play them. If they let some of the Aledmus Diaz, Tony Kemp types take at bats from these guys, it'd be frustrating. But I think they're up to play. I don't think they'd call them up to sit. So how do you feel about these 2 guys?
In some leagues, Soderstrom was listed as a first baseman, which was interesting. But
yeah, NFBC he was first base only, so he's going to have to qualify at catcher before you can play him there.
Yeah, which is a bummer. However, I have Josh Donaldson to replace in the league, and so we got him for $4.
You think Josh Donaldson's a drop?
Yeah.
Wow.
4-2 was the win. It was definitely a keep him honest sort of thing.
Wow, that's I think he's going to swing and miss a lot right away, but I think the power's there. $4, I would have taken that in a second. That's pretty nice,
and it's a nice spike drop too. So got that going for us there.
Yeah, nothing like Josh Donaldson, who you're like, all right, well, I'll just keep him through this course series. I do that, and then he gets hurt.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, thanks for that.
It's funny because he had the thing last week where he kind of grabbed his calf, and you're like, oh, here we go. And then he stayed in the game. You're like, oh, maybe not, but man, that calf is always an issue for him. I'm looking at my leagues. It wasn't big on Soderstrom. It was I see a 13. I actually see a 5. Wow, that's pretty low. He was my backup bid on that one, so I would have gotten him, but I got the guy that I bid first. Then he went for 12. So yeah, the bidding was not really intense for Soderstrom. I think that people worry about the batting average a bunch there, and also the team dynamic. The home park. There's a lot of stuff going against him there. But Zack Gelof was definitely way more popular. He went for 74 in one of my leagues. He went in the 30s for one of my others. And those are big bids for this late in the year where nobody has money. There's been a lot of FAAB articles written. Zach Waxman does one every week. Stuff that there's people are not spending money more. People are spending like $12 average a week, something like that. And it was $11.75. People just don't have cash. So the Gelof going for that much. He was a big prize this week.
Yeah, and I think you hit on something though too. I didn't see a single triple-digit win in any of my 3 main event leagues. So
I don't think
nobody has money left.
Yeah, I think Gelof was the most. He went for 74 in one of my online mains. That was the biggest one I saw.
Yeah, 51 for Soderstrom in one of my mains, online main. And then in one of the leagues, 20 was the highest win for any given player. So. This is where we're at right now. That was Mike Moustakas. That was my Vegas main, as a matter of fact. I think it's just because there's no shortage of pickups this week. Right. There was like 25 pickups, but $20 was the most for anyone who went for.
Look at my Vegas main only had 2 over 20, and they're both in the 30s. So yeah, it's I think those leagues are so. I mean, all these main event leagues are really active. It seems like the Vegas leagues are definitely ramped up from activity, at least from my experience here.
Yeah, there's one of my onlines was pretty small in terms of the number of players picked up. But that was the 50. Yeah. So Soderstrom went for 51 in that league, but there were 6, 8, 10, 11 players total picked up.
Oh, wow. That's really low.
And we didn't get one. We got aced out on our guys, but we also, I think we spent the previous week. So we just got outbid on Soderstrom, Lorenzen, and Marsh.
Yeah, Gelof has been really good in AAA this year. And I think the 20 steals kind of jumped off the page. You look at his Fangraphs page, you're like, oh, 20 steals. That's someone that I'm interested in. 12 home runs, hitting 304. He does strike out too much. It's going to be a lot of swing and miss. Went through University of Virginia, pretty decent prospect. He was a second-round pick by the A's. I think that's the problem's going to be the strikeouts. He was at 28% in AAA, which means we're going to get 30% in the majors for sure. But if he gets on base, he's fast. He can run, a little bit of pop. He had a ball to right center this week where, kind of looked like he hit the ball pretty well, but it hit the top of the wall in Oakland, which is a really good poke, that really tall wall in right center. So I think it's like, wow, the ball really jumps off his bat. So he was someone I needed steals in one league, so I went pretty aggressively with him. I got him in the 30s there. There's not a lot. Who knows who else is coming off the board here in bats? Obviously, we got Encarnacion Strand coming next week, but after that, that's kind of one of the last bigger names that we expect to bid on. So playing every day with some speed, I saw the interest in Gelof this week. Middle infield was interesting, I thought, this week in some leagues. Zack Neto is available in some leagues. Oswald Peraza getting called. We mentioned Josh Donaldson earlier going to the IL. They call it Peraza. A lot of people have been clamoring for the Peraza call-up. Although to the Yankees' credit, Peraza's been terrible since like June 1st.
Yeah,
in the minors. Hit like $170. Then he had an injury. He missed a week. I know he was really, really hot. I think he had 9 home runs in May. He was hot. Everybody wanted him right away, and then he's been really bad. So the Yankees just kind of, I think, were waiting till their hand was forced. And with Donaldson on the IL. But how do you feel about these guys? Neto's hitting leadoff for the Angels. Hard hit rate's getting pretty good. He's kind of, as he's played along, he struggled early, but looking a little better. Hitting in front of Ohtani and at least maybe Moustakas and Hunter Renfroe. I know Trout's not there, but maybe a bunch of runs scored. But how do you feel about him and Peraza? Guys that are available this week.
So I got totally whipsawed on Peraza. I've been holding on him on AL Tout Wars, and I needed a spot, and I dropped him. So of course he got called up right after that.
And that's AL only, where that is valuable.
Which is just how my Tout Wars season has gone.
Yeah.
Same thing happened with Bailey Ober earlier in the season when I actually had healthy players. Now I would never consider dropping him, but yeah, it's Peraza though. They brought him in to pinch run yesterday.
Yeah, stole a base,
and then he got caught going to third on a sac fly, like all that ended in an inning, and then later on they got walked off, so that mattered.
You kind of just summed up the Yankees like last 6 weeks in one sentence right there.
Pretty much, yeah. It's bad times right now for Yankee fans.
We talk about speed power guys. I mean, Peraza was 19 home runs, 33 stolen bases last year. He's 12-11 in the minors this year. Although with the batting average, he doesn't strike out a lot, so you think the batting average should not be that bad. He's obviously struggled when he's been with the Yankees. Only 13 games, 39 plate appearances, so kind of who cares there. But you just kind of feel like at some point you just hope they play him every day. Like I don't know if the path is there at the moment, but their offense needs a spark. I would like to see them just put him in there for 2 weeks and kind of see what happens. Let him hit, let him get comfortable. They've been so consistent with Volpe and just letting him play. And when you get like Cabrera and Peraza, they struggle a little bit. They start taking him in and out. I don't know what the playing times to look at, but if I were them, I'd find a way just to play him every day for a couple weeks and just kind of get him comfortable and see what happens.
I agree. But they've got the guy that used to be DJ LeMahieu they got to play. So
I guess. I mean, you look at their lineup and it's crazy. You look like McKinney and Isaiah kind of in the starting lineup. It's such a weird lineup right now. You just expect big names. Obviously, with Judge not in there, it's a huge hole. But I don't know. You feel like if Peraza can get warm, like he's got a spot there pretty easily with some of the names they could replace.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it's just him and Cabrera have just been a big. I expected decent things from both of them this year, and they got neither.
Yeah, Cabrera's been especially brutal. After last year, he showed a little bit, and this year he's hitting 211 right now, OBP of 270. Like that's a bat you just don't need. He's valuable based on the fact that he can play about 6 positions, but offensive wise, he's been really bad.
Remember all those Jason Dominguez spec ads too? All that that's another guy.
He crushed for like 3 weeks in spring training. Everybody's like, oh, he's going to make the opening day roster, and he's just. What's he doing in Double A? Is he doing a lot?
No, he's doing poorly. 220, 362, 378. I mean, at least he's walking a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, and he's 20, so there's time still. But it's like, he's one of those. Hasn't this guy been around forever? No, he signed at 16. It's like, okay, slow down.
I didn't remember him being such a stolen base guy. He's got 25 stolen bases.
So still has an upside.
Yeah,
but it's not happening this year.
Hitting under 220 with a lot of strikeouts. I don't think that he's not knocking down the door. That's for sure.
No.
What about Mike Moustakas here in Anaheim? Had another home run last night. Playing a bunch with the Angels. Anthony Rendon, shocker, is hurt again. Went on the IL. But Moustakas hitting the ball hard. He's I think there's actually a little bit of value here. I added him in one main event league. This is obviously a deeper league play, but I think Moustakas is the play right now. He looks better than he has in a few years at the plate at the moment.
Yeah. I think he's Mr. Right now, not necessarily Mr. Right, but
it's not a long-term ad, but for the next couple of weeks, I think he's going to play a bunch.
Yeah, I mean, they got Trey Cabbage and Fred Tomato and other people trying to vie for the Clinton. Trey Cabbage, that's actually his name. Mike Cummings, I was thinking of when I saw that.
He came in to pinch hit it was that crazy game. I think it was Saturday night. He pinched hit red fever for him. And I was like, Trey Cabbage. I had to look him up, but I actually was intrigued. He had over 20 home runs and over 20 steals in the minors. I put him on my list. I think, speaking of guys who strike out, I think he's going to strike out like 40% in the majors, though.
Yeah.
At least his first time through. But an interesting guy with some pop, but I think he's going to strike out a ton.
I think so too. 110 Ks in AAA. When you strike out that much in AAA, look out.
I legit he has a chance to be a 40% strikeout guy. I think it's the first time through, but he's got some speed, got some pop. So maybe if you fall into a hot streak, it could work. I had him in a couple of bids. I didn't end up getting him, but I did have him there. So Uncle Ted in the chat mentioned the next guy up, Travis Jankowski, playing pretty well in Texas.
Yeah.
Only issue here is he never plays against lefties, but plays against most righties, not always. I picked him up a couple weeks ago. He actually had a 5 RBI game. It was beautiful timing. It never works out that way, and you don't expect that from Jankowski. But hit 326, 13 stolen bases. I think is the key here. He only has 1 home run, but 13 steals, only 165 plate appearances. A guy that once he gets on base, he runs. They face the Dodgers this weekend, who can't hold anybody on base. That people run crazy against the Dodgers, and they face 3 righties. If you play in an NFBC type league where you can kind of put him in the weekend, he's a really interesting guy for kind of a Friday, Sunday stream this week.
Yeah. Looking to see the pitching matchups in that one there. That's always key.
It's Bobby Miller and Gonsolin and Sheehan. Bobby Miller maybe.
3 righties.
Yeah. And if it's not Miller, you got to think it's Gavin Stone. They could call him up if Miller doesn't pitch. So either way, it's not going to be a rise. It's going to be 3 righties against a team that can't throw anybody out. It's an interesting steal week if you can get on base.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Looking at other names here, I looked at Brenton Doyle in Colorado. He's been dropped in a lot of leagues. He's someone that can run a little bit, plays every day because his defense is so good. So he plays most days. Patrick Wisdom is an interesting guy, a ghost from the past year, but plays against all lefties, and the Cubs get 3 lefties to start the week. They're facing the Nationals. We mentioned their really good schedule. They face Mackenzie Gore and Patrick Corbin on Monday and Wednesday. And they switch over and play the Cardinals on Thursday, and they get Steven Matz on Thursday. So he gets 3 out of 4 early this week against desirable pitching. He's a really interesting kind of sneaky play for the first half of the week.
He finally had a homer on the 15th. That'd be Saturday, I guess. Yeah. Before that, he had gone a really long time with that. He got hurt for a little bit. But remember, he led baseball, I think, in home runs at one point in April. He had 10 quick ones.
He was hot.
He's now stuck at 15. So you can tell just the extent of his slump.
You want a guy that strikes out a lot too. Like it's an insane strikeout rate. It's a deep league play for the first half of the week. But if you're looking for something, I think he's playable the first half of the week, and you hope he runs into 2.
I'd probably avoid him in points leagues because of the negative points for strikeouts. But
Yeah, but 15 home runs. You mentioned it; they were pretty much all in April. But he's got a 19%.
If he runs into 2 of them this week, it's worth it.
Yeah,
but
when he runs in them, they're usually hit pretty hard. Obviously, there's less swing and miss there. Also, anybody else offensive wise before we jump into the rough pitching that you found yourself looking at this week?
No, I think you covered it. We covered it there. I think it was tough on everything this week, but yeah.
It was, and you're kind of coming off 3 days too, so some of these fringy guys maybe didn't play as much, so there wasn't a lot there. But right. Probably open up a little bit. You get some guys that are injuries and trade deadline. Hopefully, we get some offense to call up. But let's talk about pitching real quick here. It was rough, but first note from our sponsors at Home Run Index. We know the weather can impact how far a ball can fly, but we never know what the heat and humidity or cold air is really doing to the ball. The Home Run Forecast Index gives us an easy way to determine how good or bad the air is for ball flight. The index is calculated by measuring stadium-specific weather conditions and is played on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being the most unfavorable for a good ball flight and 10 indicating the most favorable air. There's a strong correlation between the index and the number of runs scored per game and the number of home runs hit. Games that have the highest index, 10, for the whole game average over 10 runs and 2.8 homers over the course of the year. An index is created for each game so you can see what it will be in any stadium, how the weather's influence might change over the course of the game, as well as the wind direction. Obviously really good for any kind of gaming or DFS situation. Right now you have access to the HRF premium site for only $5 a month and see what the index will look like for every hour of every game. Go to homerunforecast.com now to sign up. So, Jeff, we mentioned starting pitching has been really rough. Was there anybody you were looking at? Obviously, Grayson Rodriguez was rostered everywhere. I looked at Alec, Marsh, and Ryan Yarbrough in KC. Marsh came off a game where he struck out 11 guys. That was mildly interesting to me, so I had him on some lists.
Yeah, me too.
Matt Manning was available in 12-teamers. He was about 32% rostered there. What were we doing with starting pitching? Because as mentioned earlier, I found it almost impossible to find anyone I wanted to even think about touching.
So Marsh and Manning took a chance on because they're young enough. there's an unknown fact. I don't think they've been solved. I don't think that we know exactly what they are. So why not? You mentioned the 11 Ks with Marsh.
Marsh and Yarbrough get Detroit this week, which is obviously a matchup thing. It helps too.
I couldn't pull the trigger on Yarbrough. I kind of drew that line there. Manning, yes.
Cool story that Yarbrough's back after getting hit by the line drive, but
for sure.
You don't get any strikeouts, so you're just holding your breath. He doesn't get smoked on ratios.
Exactly. But like others on this list, like Oviedo, Daniel Lynch, Stripling, it's just a bridge too far for me. I just couldn't do it. Manning, I'm definitely interested in to see. Like, this is his first start since the no-hitter. They gave him a lot of time there. I hope he's sharp, actually, without the extra days off. I'm a little concerned about that, to be honest. But Detroit's an interesting team. I think they could be sellers at the trade deadline. They could sell Erod for sure because of his unique contract situation. He's got an opt-out that he could exercise. There are 10 games under 500. They don't score runs. I mean, they've scored 357 runs this year. It's a really bad offense. Even though they've had some young guys coming back. Riley Green just came back. Torkelson's kind of figuring things out. Kerry Carpenter had himself a day this weekend against the Mariners. Yeah. You can see things that you're like, okay, I can see something there. They're in the right division. I mean, the Guardians just have lost 4 in a row. I mean, the Tigers are only 6 games out of the division. So you could see them like, okay, let's try to go for it, because a team like Detroit just getting playoff experience would be pretty huge. But at the same time, they're not very good. So Erod could get dealt.
Gotta think they trade Lorenzen, right? Like peak value. Like gotta pull the trigger.
Trade him back to the Reds. I could see that happening, but probably not actually. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. They're going to get Mize back someday, theoretically. Then they get Mize, Skubal, and Manning, and all of a sudden, they got their core there again. Faedo is just not going to happen, I'm afraid. He was a first-round pick. That stinks when a guy busts like that, when your first-round pick busts. But feel bad for the kid too. I mean, it's just not happening right now.
Do you someone in the chat mentioned the White Sox? Do you think the White Sox end up trading Cease or Lance Lynn? I don't think they're going to trade Cease, but Lance Lynn, I imagine Cease is not a free agent until 2026. I assume they're going to want to keep that contract, although he would obviously bring a big ticket. But do you think they trade Lance Lynn?
Yes, I think if they can, they trade Lynn. They trade Giolito. I don't think they trade Cease because a couple of years still left on the contract. I think that's a little different situation. Giolito is like a must move. I was telling people at the break, I did a VEASAN segment. Like, I don't think the White Sox sell off has been priced in yet, in terms of like team total, like total wins bet. I think they would have had to go 34 and 36 to reach their win total by going the rest way from the break. And I know they won 2 out of 3 this weekend in Atlanta, but I think that they're going to start selling off these guys. Yeah. And when they do,
and Giolito's a free agent, so that's a rental. You got to think they would like to get something for him there.
100%. I don't think Hendricks gets dealt, just because 2 things. One, I think there's just a lot of health uncertainty, and 2, I think there's sentimental value to keep him with the White Sox too. So I don't think that happens. But
I'd probably you could trade Graveman though. You could trade the setup guy instead.
For sure. You could trade him. They could trade some bats away. Eloy got hurt again yesterday.
It's like every time you're like, oh, Eloy's been healthy for a while. Boom, there it is. They said 4 or 5 days. Yeah, if he's in the lineup Friday, I'd be shocked.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm so jaded about him.
Yeah,
and I'm the dummy that bought into it too in draft season. I got some Eloy this year. After last year, he'll be healthy. Oh God, what was I thinking?
I did too. And every time he gets going, you're like, oh, here we go. It's another thing. On the starting pitchers, I did take a shot on Johan Oviedo. 2 of when he pitches well, he pitches really, really well. But man, he's bad when he pitches badly. You just don't know what you're going to get. But that's kind of how desperate I was. He gets he's at the Angels this week, which I don't love, but don't hate, I guess.
They just played a 13-12 game. I don't know.
They played what was last night? What was last night? 8-7 or what? 9-8. Yeah. And obviously, maybe he can just walk Shohei every time, but. Then he's at San Diego. It's not great. It just speaks to how little there is out there that I'm looking at some of these guys that I would normally in most seasons would not even consider, but need strikeouts at some point.
Yeah, exactly.
What about relievers? We had a couple situations open up over the weekend a little bit. Hunter Harvey went on the IL in Washington, which puts Kyle Finnegan in our world again. The Rangers kind of announced that Chapman and Will Smith are going to share the job, which I'm a little surprised by. I thought they brought in Chapman, it would just be to set up. I mean, a really good setup guy, but I thought Will Smith would keep it because he's been really good for them. Was Chapman available anywhere for you? Did you bid on Finnegan, who obviously we know we're gonna get some ratio damage there, but not horrible. Did you grab either of those guys, or what do you consider about those situations?
I mean, Finnegan is probably the guy, but it seems like they don't want him to be the guy.
No, although I think right now he probably is.
Default, because there's really not too many other options. I'm trying to even look to see who else Washington has, and then I'm looking to see if it even matters. It could be like the A's though, where Trevor May's got 6 saves, but they have 7.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I guess it's Mason Thompson's really it is the only other option right now. God, what
that is a. By the way, I'm looking at the bullpen now too. That is a rough bullpen.
It is rough. So yeah, I don't have too many really good options as far as that goes.
And Finnegan's ERA is 3.4. I mean, he's serviceable. The whip's a little bit high, but he was good last year. Had a 1.14 whip last year. Strikeouts were up, but they're back down again. So like that bump we saw last year is kind of gone. I mean, he's just a guy that if you have him, you need saves, you're desperate, you got to do it, but just don't watch the game.
Yeah, right. I was surprised seeing Chapman get the save Saturday. It looked so good that they went to Will Smith yesterday. Happy because I have a lot of Will Smith and I don't have a lot of Aroldis Chapman. But I mean, I think the Rangers still add yet another reliever too at some point in time, a right-handed one.
Yeah, I would think so. With Chapman and Smith both being lefties, you think that they would do that. But I mean, the funny thing with Chapman is like Chapman's fully back. He's not the elite guy he was, but he's fully back to the 2020 type guy where the strikeouts are at 43%. I know the walks are crazy high, but that's just who he is now. We're never gonna get that walk rates, even in the 11-12% range we used to have. Or he was under 10 when he was really elite, but 14% walk rate's tough. But when you strike everybody out, even when guys are on base, you swing strike rate's 18%. He's back to those like elite swing and miss days, and ERA is 2.1, whips 1.11. I mean, this is an ad for a team that the Rangers are really good. Their offense is really good. If they can piece together the pitching, they're tough. It's a really important ad, real baseball wise. I think that they made a really good choice here.
I agree. And they did it early. This is a point we drive home all the time. Increase that impact. Add, it's hard to do because you got to get willing sellers, and that's the tricky part. But fantasy leagues wise too. The earlier you can add these players, when especially you're in a keeper or dynasty league. If you're a contender, act early. And the other thing is it's going to force others to kind of react too, and they'll have to make that hard decision. Are they going for it or not? And they may make a bad trade in reaction to that too. I mean, it may make a good trade and force you to compete, but maybe you get the jump on everyone, especially like you do it like right before a transaction deadline. It may surprise people and they can't react for another week. And then you got a week jump on everybody too. So
getting someone, July 1st as opposed to August 1st, such a huge difference. Like you said, fantasy leagues and real baseball, it's 50% more time. I mean, it's just 3 months instead of 2. It's a huge difference.
I always remember CC Sabathia going to the Brewers weeks before the trade deadline. He made like 5 starts before the deadline, and they were all great starts. I mean, massive.
I was about to say, how were those starts? Were they any good?
Yeah, big impact.
He looks good, by the way. He's lost like 50 pounds. He was playing in the celebrity golf tournament this weekend. He looked really good.
Yeah.
He's down to a 9 handicap too. So apparently he's heavily invested. He was a 20.
You were watching because of Steph, right?
Oh, that was awesome.
When you said you were watching golf, I had to figure that out for a second. Wait a second. Scottish ended way earlier. Why were you watching golf?
The Scottish was awesome too, although bad for me. I picked up Robert McIntyre in our league, played him in one and done, and had him in DraftKings. And I thought I had like the biggest score ever with the 1 week pickup, and then Rory birdied 17 and 18.
Yeah, but still, I mean, it's like you still got it was still a great pickup, though.
Yeah, it still was, but just like I had him bet at 85-1 too. So that
that part, yeah,
that part was really key. So I was up at like 6:30 watching that. It was actually really fun.
I still have Rory left in one and done. I was saving him for next week. Shame on me. I should have used him.
At least it was a small purse. It was only like 1.6 million, but those birdies at 17-18 were, I don't know if you watched it all, but it was windy. I think there were 2 birdies on 18 all day. McIntyre was one of them, but the fact that he birdied 17-18 was quite impressive. If I'm gonna lose, at least I get beat by something like that. I can deal with that.
Exactly.
Relievers that, we talked about starting pitching is rough. A couple of guys like Griffin Jacks is available in some leagues. He's pitching really well in Minnesota. And Yohan Duran pitched all 3 games against the A's. So that's someone that maybe they give him 2 days off. Like he may, Jacks could get a save. Jacks could pitch him this week. We mentioned Joel Payamps earlier. Devin Williams pitched all 3 games against our Reds. So, you're always looking for small situations like that, especially with good relievers in spots where maybe they can steal a save. Maybe they give Williams a couple days off. They give Duran a couple days off.
Yeah. They're off today at least, so that helps them too. But
both teams off. They are, huh? Minnesota plays today.
No, I'm talking Brewers.
Yeah, but Brewers are off. Minnesota plays 7 this week with Duran pitching 3 games. I think Jacks could get a. They have to win the game in the right day, but at least Jacks is good, so protecting ratios there. Last thing I want to ask you, pitching wise, I think the interesting ads the last couple weeks have been pitching stashes, guys coming off the IL soon. We're talking Chris Sale, Nick Lodolo, Jose Urquidy, a little less interesting even when healthy than those 2 guys. Kyle Wright in Atlanta. Have you found yourself trying to grab any of these guys? Because it seems like they're all back maybe early to mid-August. Maybe you hope for 6 good weeks. With pitching being so bad, I don't like to stash, but I added Lodolo in one spot. I'm keeping him on the bench because it's either that or keep some pitcher that I don't want to pitch anyway.
I haven't stashed much.
I hate doing it. I just found myself a little bit this year just because if I can get 6 weeks of a good pitcher, it'd be nice.
I think Shu and I stashed Urquidy too soon, and then we cut him.
The timing is right about now because you probably maybe you wait 3 to 4 weeks and get them. It's kind of thing like if they get any kind of setback or any kind of soreness in the rehab, I'd probably just drop them. But I don't know. With pitching being so rough, if I get 6 weeks of one of these guys, I think it might be helpful.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, Sale, I think would be the obvious upside target.
Yeah, he'd be my number 1. Lodolo would probably be my number 2, and Urquidy could he be pretty far on the list as number 3. A few players I wanted to ask you about before we jump out of here. We talked a lot this preseason about Bobby Witt Jr. He was a heavy riser, middle of the first round. And it seemed like as he got to the bigger drafts, he was kind of pushed towards the end of the first round. People were like, I don't know if I trust him as a first rounder. 16 home runs, 27 stolen bases, hitting 260. Strikeout rates down. He has 50 runs, 51 RBIs. That's a team dynamic thing. It hurts a little bit there, but has upped his hard hit rate. We were worried about that. It wasn't great as a rookie, but he's up to 45%. Barrel rate's up 3%. His stat line looks really, really legit right now, and he's paid off that first round price in pretty much every way.
Yeah, I think so. Eric Halterman and I were talking about him on the Thursday pod last week, and talking about hey, all the metrics even point to him even being a little bit better too. Yeah. So he's definitely been it. It's go figure. Elite, that he's gotten there. I think if there's a hole in my game, it's the I need to see it thing. I did that with Wander Franco, with Rutschman. I don't have a whole lot of these guys. I got Witt early on, and then I talked myself out of them later on. Guys, young players can crash and burn too. See also Michael Harris, although he's gotten better. But these young pedigree guys are young pedigree guys for a reason, and I want more of them, not less of them next year.
Yeah, I mean, Witt's a fantasy monster. Interesting enough, real base wise, he's only a 301 OBP right now. He just doesn't block. So you'd like to see that. I mean, as he gets kind of in the real base world, you'd like to see that a little better. But 1627 on July 17th, he's going to fly by he was 2030 last year. So last year he was really good fantasy wise. He's going to fly by those numbers, and it's been fun to see. You hope that Kansas City can get some guys around him because he's clearly a building block there.
Do we focus too much on OBP, by the way? I'm thinking like Adolis Garcia here.
Yeah, I mean, we probably always a downgrade, guy for real baseball. But yeah, probably for fantasy, unless you play an OBP league, obviously, then it's very important that Witt's at 3
or strikeouts. I guess is maybe more what I'm focusing too much on.
Yeah, it's hard because there's these freak guys that can kind of be really good. But Javier Baez was that way until he wasn't. So you just you worry that there's a cliff right there. But there are guys that can Witt doesn't strike out, which is nice.
And Adolis, to his credit, is cut down on his Ks a little bit too. Sorry, I interrupted.
He's a freak too. He's just I love. It's funny. I went from I had him as a rookie. I added him in both my main event leagues. His rookie year, he was huge for me. And I'm like, oh, I'm not doing this again. To the point now, I love watching him hit. He's fun to watch play.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm glad he's on a good team. Someone who was we didn't really know what to do with in preseason this year, and he's kind of an 8th, 9th rounder. I grabbed him in the main event. He's been good for me. All the rest of that team has not been. But Christian Yelich looks fully back so far this year. He's got a 53% hard hit rate. Barrel rate's 10.6%. Like you look at, he's not quite at the 2019 levels, but that was happy fun ball year, but he's really close to it. The hard hit rate's the second best of his career. Barrel rate's like 4th best, but he, 13 home runs. He has 21 stolen bases. He's fully running. He's on pace to break his career high for stolen bases, which was that 2019 season. Hitting 286. The strikeouts are down. It's crazy. You look at 2020. He struck out 31% of the time. He's back down to 21%, which he was in his elite days. I think he's just fully healthy finally. That back was an issue for so long. He's been really good. I feel like it's been quiet, but he's been really good this year.
I am sick and tired of seeing Christian Yelich against my Reds.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So sick and tired of him.
He owns
our Reds.
He owns our Reds, by the way. He really owns them.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's he has like 2 cycles against the Reds. Maybe he's ownership. I'm trying to find like the actual full-on like career numbers against the Reds. It's ridiculous though. He just owns them. Had another homer yesterday. Just so sick and tired of him. Great season, happy for him. Blah blah. Get the hell out of town, please.
Yeah, go do it somewhere else. But I mean, he's been awesome. You talk about OBP. I mean, he's a 378. His slugging percentage is 100 points higher than it was in 2021. I just think he wasn't healthy for a long time there. A back is something that it just never fully goes away until it finally does, but it just lingers and lingers and lingers. It's good to see him healthy though. He's a fun guy. He seems like a really good dude. I know he's beaten our Reds, but it's been fun to see him kind of get back to his elite status.
Yeah, exactly.
On the full flip side, what does one do these days with Alejandro Kirk? He was super helium in spring training or in spring drafts. Coming off the year, we hit 285 with 14 home runs. Kirk right now is at 231, 3 home runs, obviously no steals. He has 15 runs scored this year in a lineup that has a ton of guys to drive him in, but he's on base percentage down 60 points from last year. Slugging percentage is under 300. He's at a 298 slug right now. He's actively hurting fantasy teams. He's actually hurting real world baseball teams. Hard hit rate's down 9%. Barrel rate's down under 5%. I looked at him. He was available in one of my leagues. I looked at him I just couldn't see any reason to pick him up, which is weird. But do you drop Kirk right now and just kind of move on? I don't know what do you do with someone like this? You obviously spent a pretty high draft pick on.
I mean, I cut him in friends and family, but I think
that's a one catcher league too, at least. So that makes it a little bit easier. I think you did because I saw him available there too, and I was like, I looked closer. I'm like,
Christian Kirk's available. Oh,
don't want that.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, you just dropped a Christian Kirk on him. You got to stop doing football.
Did I say Christian?
You did say Christian.
Alejandro. Sorry. Yeah, that was really bad.
It's only July, Jeff. I know it's football season, but it's only July.
Yeah, I'm doing the football pod in about an hour, 20 minutes. So.
Oh, it starts out this week, right?
Yep, it does.
I don't start the football pod till September, so
I did live Scott Fishbowl on Saturday. That was super fun.
That wherever you guys were looked really cool.
Yeah, so that was Trophy Smack down in the city of Orange.
Company that makes trophies? Is that actually
fantasy trophies?
Okay. Belts
draft,
and stuff like that. Yeah,
belts, all sorts of good stuff for your fantasy leagues, prizes, all that sort of stuff. Great time there. I think there were 5 drafts going on at once.
Nice.
And that place is ridiculous. They have a 2-lane bowling alley, video games, pool table, ping pong table.
I would say I liked the Travis Matthew clear top ping pong table. That was pretty sweet.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to play on that. I really wanted to play on that, but anyhow,
you're a tennis player. You're a good ping pong player too.
I'm pretty good.
Wow, look at you. That was said very to the point that I know they must be really, really good.
It's all right. I wouldn't go on any tour or anything, but yeah, I'm pretty good. I have the strokes.
Couple of pitchers I wanted to ask you about before we jump out of here who've been really good lately. Kyle Bradish in Baltimore. We talked about him a lot last year because it was the weird half year where he was really good, then he was lucky. It was very strange, but you look at him right now, 3.05 ERA, 1.13 WHIP in a year where pitching has been hard to find. Strikeout rate's about 23.5%. Walk rate has gone down really nicely, down 6.5%. His BABIP is 286, so maybe a little bit lucky, but not not a number that you're oh my gosh, well, that's where it comes from. Strand rate's about normal. It's up from last year. We saw that was lucky last year. Bradish has been really, really good. Gets a lot of ground balls. That mixes really well with the the kind of medium level of strikeouts. He's been huge. I know his like xFIP is higher. It's 377, but that's still a workable number. He's been really, really good for Baltimore.
Yeah, he has, and he got off to a little bit of a slow start, so people maybe not be fully aware of how good he's been. Obviously he was hurt a little bit earlier on. You're not getting huge strikeout numbers, but good ones. You'll take that there.
And on a team that is clearly really, really legit and really good.
Yeah. Love that he kind of started right back off yesterday from where he was going into the break. Really pitched well against the Marlins, kind of cooled the Marlins off a little bit there. So really, really nice role he's been on lately.
Yeah, he's been great. I mean, he's one of those guys that if you got him in the mid rounds, he's been huge because he's putting up numbers for a 4th or 5th rounder. The other guy I want to ask you about is someone that gave up 7 runs his first start. We're like, all right, let's get rid of this guy. Kutter Crawford in Boston has been really, really good since that blow up early. He went to the pen and so he wasn't pitching a lot of innings, but he's made I think it's like 7 or 8 starts in a row. A couple of his games up 4 runs, but no more than that. Yesterday against the Cubs, 6 innings, 1 hit. He did have the 4 walks, but 9 strikeouts. He's got the ERA under 4 now, which is hard to do when you give up 7 in your first start. He's at 3.74, 1.13 on the whip is really nice. He's another guy, about the same numbers K to walk as Bradish has. 24.5 strikeout rate's a little bit more, but 6.2% walk rate. So only like 18% K minus walk. Swinging strike rate's at 12.8%, like a really good number there. He's someone that looks really, really good, looks legit right now for the Red Sox.
Yeah, that's right. And he and Brian Bayo have been like 2 very good stories for the Red Sox this year because these are sustainable. These are things that can last for a while for this team. I think Kutter Crawford can last for a while. We'll see. I mean, now they finally settled like, hey, our young guys have to stay in the rotation.
Finally, yeah, agreed.
Now, and part of this is they had to figure out what to do. Tanner Houck got hurt. That opened up a kind of an avenue there, and that was an unfortunate.
Sale got hurt. Whitlock got hurt. Like they've been kind of forced to do it, but in some ways, it's kind of maybe they figure out what they have here, and when the other guys come back, these guys can stay in too.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's been fun. I actually liked watching. Whether the Red Sox have been they've been fun to watch recently. They've been hot, and with these 2 guys pitching. You mentioned Bayo and Crawford. It's been fun to see a little bit of some of the young guys get to pitch there. So they've been Crawford's been really, really good. Before we jump out of here, a couple of injury notes. There are no games today until 4:00 Pacific, so there's no early games, which is kind of nice on a Monday. You mentioned Eloy Jimenez could be out 4 to 5 days. Who knows if that's actually, I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up on the IL. But obviously, in FBC type leagues where you can play the first half of the week, just get him out and worry about the second half later. Shane Bieber went on the IL. They mentioned 2 weeks without throwing, but no surgery. So, like, good news in the grand scheme. But fantasy-wise, it's July 17th, and you got to figure if he doesn't throw for 2 weeks, we're talking at 5 weeks before he pitches a major game, 4 weeks at best. But you got to figure he's going to, ramp up bullpens, maybe a rehab outing. We're looking at 4 or 5 weeks before we see him back on the mound in Cleveland. Right.
And then what do you get when he does come back? Like, this is the guy whose velocity was starting to go down anyhow.
Is it 3 or 4 innings for a couple starts too? Like, when can you actually use him is a really good point by you.
Yeah. So thank you.
Do you hold him?
I'm now thinking about not.
I think I saw he got dropped in a couple of main events. I'd have to look at the exact percentage, but I think he got dropped in a couple. I think in a 15-teamer with pitching being as it is that we've mentioned multiple times, I think you got to keep him there. But like in a 12-team online championship, I think that I don't think it's crazy to drop him right now with the thought that you're hoping to get a month at the end of the year, maybe.
Right, 97 K. I think 97 Ks, 95 Ks on 117 innings too. So you're really not getting the benefit of the bargain here. And they say he doesn't need surgery. He won't throw for 2 weeks. Yeah, we've seen this go sideways many, many, many times.
I want to say most times. It's probably not most times. It feels like most times, but you're right. There's a lot of times. He's 96% rostered in the main event now. So it means he got dropped in 3 leagues if I'm doing the math right. So it's starting to get there. But I think in a 12-teamer, if I needed the spot and I'd drop him there, I'd hold him in a 15 right now, though.
Yep, I hear you.
Kevin Gausman is an interesting call this week. He was scratched on Saturday with some left side discomfort. I typoed that in the outline. Sorry about that typo there.
I just noticed that.
Sorry about that. Not going to pitch this weekend or this week earlier, the first half of the weekend against San Diego, which means maybe he pitches this weekend against Seattle. In a league like almost any league, even in FPC, you got to make your starting pitching decisions early in the week when the games start. Do you sit him this week? He's so good. Do you hope to start in Seattle? What does one do? Obviously, the answer is going to be who's your alternative. But how do you feel about Gausman? Because you're taking a really good chance of 0 because there's a pretty good chance they backdate him and put him in the IL just to be safe with it.
Yeah, when you all of a sudden it goes from side to oblique, that's when you know.
Don't say that word, Jeff. We don't want that.
Oh, I don't want to be upset. So
it's what it is. They just don't want to say it. But if I had to make a decision, I got to make a decision on Tuesday with the Jays. I'm sitting Gausman this week. As much as I hate to do it, I'm sitting him. I think the chances of 0 are too high for me. Despite the fact that he's obviously great, I think I'm sitting him this week.
Yeah, I think so too. Which stinks because he's your ace.
Yeah, and you're putting your 10th best pitcher in, which is especially painful. Speaking of the Jays, Jordan Romano had the back tightness in the All-Star game after he gave up a monster home run. Was that, I forget who hit it.
Monster foul ball.
Oh, that's right. That one was foul. It was Gurriel. That's right. It was a foul ball, but yeah, it was. Yeah. That was a hanging slider.
Not a hanger, Sarge.
Yeah. I got that one too. With Romano, his imaging came back clean. He obviously was not ready to pitch because they had a couple save situations over the weekend. I think Yimi Garcia got one, Eric Swanson got the other. Same situation with Romano. I think I'm throwing him this week, but I'd sure like to see a good news blur before I made the decision.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we're gonna get the dreaded Monday news drop. I feel like a couple of these guys, right?
We are. The problem is they don't play Monday, so we might get the dreaded Tuesday, which is worse because you might not have an option to put in.
Yeah, that's right.
So a lot of teams play 7 this week. So as of now, I'm starting Romano, but I'm clearly scouring the news there and making sure that if I can get him out, I can do so. Last guy I want to mention, Sal Perez. I'm kind of hitting on the big names here. Hamstring. He went out with hamstring tightness yesterday. And they mentioned hamstring strain when they updated. Said he's going for testing Monday.
That's not good.
I'd be shocked if it was a catcher. He doesn't end up on the IL, which is almost impossible. I have Perez in one league, and I actually went and picked up a backup catcher because I just think it's not going to work out. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to squat when you have a bad hamstring. It's exactly the point. I guess he could DH, but yeah, I think that. Even the mildest of strains, you got to think with the ability to make him 10 days instead of 15 days in the IL for offensive players. I got to think they do it. I think you're right. Yeah. I think everybody else in this list was kind of just minor notes. Obviously, like Eddie Rosario, Cedric Mullins, check the lineups this week. They both sat over the weekend with some minor stuff, but those are lineups you just got to check. Other than that, I think that's kind of it. Jeff, it was good to be back with you. It's been a couple of weeks, so I enjoy chatting as always. Great to be back. And great. Thanks to everybody for chiming in the chat room too. We appreciate it there, especially with our different record time today. So yeah, there's a lot of, it's kind of fun. There's a lot of people like talking back and forth to each other in the chat, just kind of using that as a place to chat about. There was some prospect chat that I didn't know some of the names, so I couldn't weigh in on, but it's fun to see that. Yeah. Just people want to come to hang out, talk ball. It's all good. Always a good thing. Indeed. So thanks everybody for chiming in today. Appreciate you. Absolutely. We appreciate that. We'll be back at you next Sunday night. And then I hope everybody's a really good week. Good start to the second half in your fantasy leagues here. We look forward to chatting it down the stretch here. I hope everybody has a really good week. Take care.